Rural Guatemala, a place many people don't think about. In this equatorial region of the world, many go without medical care that most Americans take for granted. These people of Guatemala lack such basic things as being born in a hospital, simple medicine like Tylenol or aspirin, or even more complex things like oral surgery. This is something Children of the Americas helps give the indigenous people of rural Guatemala. Since 2001, Children of the Americas, also known as CODA, has donated over 1,000 major surgeries in northern Guatemala. They have also taken 110 children back to the United States for surgery they cannot perform in the jungles of such remote areas. CODA's blog recounts one tragic tale as follows. He was shot through the face as he rode in the bed of a pickup truck while winding through the mountains of rural Guatemala. This unsolved crime left Angel with a shattered jaw and teeth that were of no use. For the 2 years, he ate only soft foods or liquids, until his mother heard of Children of the Americas and our ability to bring medical care to the fragile children to the States for donated care. Stories like these are all too common in Guatemala. Angel was one of just the many children that come to see the medical professionals at CODA. Something like this can happen to anyone, and while in America you could go to a hospital and get this fixed, this was not the case for Angel. There are many children who suffer from debilitating injuries that could be fixed relatively easily in America. And while Angel did end up getting a happy ending, many of his countrymen do not. CODA is the only reason why Angel was able to get any treatment. Northern Guatemala is a region plagued with turmoil. From civil wars to government repression, this region has a lot of adversity working against it. One of the reasons that this region has so many issues with their healthcare system is that it's very poorly funded, averaging just around $97 per person. To give some perspective, the United States spends on average about $7,825 per person. Another issue is they struggle with over 22 different languages are spoken, making communication very difficult. Also, many of the indigenous people do not trust the Guatemalan government due to past repression. This lack of faith translates into the indigenous people not trusting Guatemalan doctors as well. Many would rather see a local shaman than a doctor. There are many reasons why CODA is necessary. They can take critically injured children to the United States for advanced health care they cannot receive in their homeland. They have done this 110 times since their founding. This is one of the important services CODA provides, because many of these poor Guatemalan families do not have the financial capital to afford food, nonetheless expensive medical procedures. They also bring a translator to help bridge lingual gaps. CODA also represents a neutral third party that has no stake in the conflicts of the past. Children of the Americas tries to help the women and children of Central America. They do this mainly in northern Guatemala. The work they do with children is some of the most important work they do. Guatemala has the third highest infant mortality rate at 24 deaths per 1,000 births, coming only behind Haiti, 49 deaths per 1,000 births, and Trinidad and Tobago, 25 deaths per 1,000 births. For comparison, the United States has an infant mortality rate of only 6 per 1,000, a rate 4 times lower than Guatemala. CODA helps decrease this rather high infant mortality rate by providing care to malnourished children and treating fixable wounds. Do you know that the United States spends a total of 17% of its GDP on healthcare? Guatemala spends less than 2% of its GDP on healthcare. Even though Guatemala is Central America's largest economy, it has some of the worst healthcare in the region. For example, Cuba spends around 10% of its GDP on healthcare and has an infant mortality rate of 0.005%, contrasted with Guatemala's 0.024%. That means for every 1,000 babies born, 24 of them do not survive. CODA provides the primarily indigenous women and children of rural Guatemala with healthcare they could not get on their own. The reason they cannot get this healthcare is due to the lack of money and infrastructure. CODA travels to Guatemala once a year in August to provide everything from basic medicine such as Tylenol and aspirin to major surgeries such as fixing cleft palates and removing tumors. Since 2008, they've also been heavily working on the dental health of the patients they see by providing oral surgery and connecting some of the damage done to the teeth of the women and children that has previously been untouched. One volunteer with CODA is Mike McNeven. He volunteered for CODA for the first time in 2016. He said the reason he wanted to join was his urge to help people and the adversity it presented them. The story is similar to that of many volunteers within the organization. Most of the staff in CODA are people with medical backgrounds who want to help the people in need of it most. Mike said this about CODA. Although the overall experience was not exactly easy, I am grateful for the adversity I faced and the opportunity to work hard as an interpreter and other roles for these amazing people. They still inspire me with their patience, love, gratitude, and friendliness. They're a great example for all of us, and it was a pleasure to help them. The blog would also go on to say, the return rate of 80% of applicants to our Guatemalan team speaks volumes about the overall experience and quality of our medical team members. Working in a challenging environment with each other causes a familiarity and a kinship that carries through till the year we see each other again. However, organizing these trips is not easy. Financial problems make CODA's job very difficult. All of the expenses, from the medical equipment they use, to the transportation, even to the food they must be provided by the people who go on the trips. There are people who donate money, but the majority of the money is self-funded. If this issue is not debilitating enough, they also require highly trained people for their jobs to be effective. This is compounded by the fact to volunteer you must have spare time. These expeditions last for about 2 weeks. Finding volunteers that have training, money, and time is not an easy order. This is something that seriously hurts CODA in many ways. For example, their ability to reach other impoverished countries such as Haiti, Trinidad and Tobago, and Nicaragua, who are just as bad off but do not receive help from CODA. If all of this seems bad, then in the summer of 2016 a drought hit. Of the 22 provinces in Guatemala, 16 of them had a state of emergency declared by the central government. This was especially devastating to the rural indigenous farmers, who mainly persist on corn, beans, and coffee. While droughts are devastating for all countries, they're especially bad in a nation where 60% of the people live on less than $1.50 per day. The children are most affected by this. Their wounds do not heal, mothers cannot provide enough nutrients for their unborn children, and malnutrition sets in. This makes CODA's job harder in many ways. As of now, the situation in Guatemala is getting worse, and there's nothing CODA can do to fix it. When you add this onto their manpower constraints, this means nothing is going to change with CODA. Their efforts will be still less, even if they keep doing exactly what they're doing. As with many parts of the world, the issues facing Guatemala are far-reaching. CODA merely treats the symptoms of these problems, not the issues that cause them. It is conceivable that many people may not want to join the organization considering this. No matter how many people CODA patches up, there will always be more. Many might ask, why give CODA any attention? Why not just give the money straight to Guatemala? That's probably not the most effective way to change things. Just giving money to Guatemala as aid would not likely help anything. As previously stated, the government and the indigenous people have a history of conflict, and often conflicting interests such as land distribution. This is compounded by the fact that many times international aid falls into the hands of corrupt bureaucrats and politicians. Increased international aid will not help the regular people in any meaningful way or even solve the underlying issues at hand. CODA will never fix infrastructure problems or redistribute the land. They cannot mend the wounds of the Civil War. It is simply not possible. This is the fundamental flaw of CODA and all organizations that try to give aid to impoverished nations abroad. They can never solve issues, only treat symptoms. This is not inherently bad. They're a non-profit organization, not the government. But this still is the flaw of the whole concept in the first place. It plays to emotion. The thought that a bunch of Lexington doctors can go save the people of Guatemala is naive. All they can do is clean up a small part of the mess they did not make. This might even hurt Guatemala. How are local doctors supposed to compete with the price of free? They can't. It damages the growth. It is also important to note that the country with the best healthcare in the region, Cuba, has had to receive no such help. In fact, many times they have been directly hurt by other countries. Also, as stated previously, CODA has only performed around 1,000 or so operations since its beginning. That's not a lot for a nation that has a population of over 15 million people. For how many people they help, how many people do not get any help at all? CODA has made several hundred individuals' lives immeasurably better. That is undeniable. However, it is also undeniable that the way CODA is organized and funds its expeditions is unsustainable. CODA also does not fix the issues that cause these problems in the first place. This is a major trade-off. If you're interested in getting involved with a non-profit organization that helps people, well, this is the non-profit for you. If you actually want to fix an issue, your time and money would be much better spent elsewhere. The latter perhaps is the best option, given that it is not only ineffective, but it can also harm the natural processes that result in a nation overcoming its issues. Nations like Haiti, that despite receiving over $13 billion in aid, it is little better than it was before the aid had arrived. CODA's main issue is that they focus on emotional arguments rather than logical arguments. They always take an issue and downsize it to one individual. Like Angel, they talk about how they helped him as an individual, but not the bigger issues. Like, they didn't talk about the person that shot him and why this person was shooting people and whatever happened to them. That person's still out there. They were never caught. Maybe they've shot someone else. Even if they haven't, there's still a lot of violence in the Central American region. Fixing the wounded will not change anything. CODA's emotional arguments hardly justify putting time and money into their cause. Perhaps a better alternative to CODA is investing in nonprofits that help your local area instead. This is a better option because no one knows local problems better than the local people. So then people can be more proactive in taking part in fixing the issues they have, rather than just hiding the issues that still exist with anecdotes about helping individuals. While what CODA does is extremely nice and thoughtful, it is simply not effective in a large sense. At least, not enough for me to volunteer for their organization. The best way to help Guatemala is probably to advocate for the local people, to help them stand up and provide charity for their own people, and then to build their own country up, to mend the wounds that divided their nation, to permanently fix the issues that they have with their healthcare and everything for good. In conclusion, CODA is an organization of idealistic people, perhaps a bit naive as well. They think they can go there and help this region that has problems that date all the way back to Christopher Columbus in the 1400s and solve these issues single-handedly. Well, they can't. And I think ultimately the best way is to rally international effort into putting pressure on these people to help themselves, because ultimately the only way to create permanent, lasting change is to encourage the people of Guatemala to help their own and build up what has been lost through the past. And that is the ultimate way to permanently fix their issues that they have in this region of rural Guatemala.